Good day. I am Quentin Can, a future leader from the islands of Bermuda. Today, we have a few news items from around the overseas territories. St. Kitts and Nevis Ambassador, Honorable Vance Winkworth Amory, the former Premier of Nevis, died on April 2nd. Amory served Nevis as Premier for 2 terms, between 1992 and 2006, and between 2013 and 2017. In the Cayman Islands, late statesman Benson Obadiah Ebanks was laid to rest. Ebanks served as a member of the Legislative Assembly from 1965 to 1976, and again from 1980 to 1992. For informed discussion, please like our Territories Talk Facebook page and subscribe to our Territories Talk YouTube channel as we continue to unite our OT family.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here for Territories Talk. It is Wednesday, April 27th, and we are discussing tonight food security with Daphne Ewing-Chow and Theodore James from Barbados and Cayman Islands, and Mr. James, of course, from British Virgin Islands. Before that, I'm just going to send apologies from Shayna Smith-Archer and Chris Famous. They cannot be on the show tonight. Chris is actually at the CREF conference about renewable energy, and Shayna is on a bit of a vacation right now for this week. And so I will be running the show tonight. And sound off and let us know where you are watching from and what island you're on. And right now I'm going to put a couple of links into the comments here that everyone will be able to access. And what this is some of the events that have been happening this week. Turks and Caicos Climate Change Summit happened earlier this week, and this is a link now to their here we go to that climate change summit and the signing of their new charter. That was a very, very inspiring to watch. I have viewer Sonia Morris from Cayman Islands, and we have as well Honorable Walter Roban from Bermuda, who gave the keynote speech at the TCI Climate Summit. We're going to put his speech in there. It was an excellent keynote address. Oh. Something is going on there. Anyways. And of course, we had the Caribbean Financial Access Roundtable. That was happening in Barbados. And there is a link for that for the YouTube presentation of that event. And we have the 14th Annual Caribbean Renewable Energy Forum, and this is to their website right here. So lots of things going on in the Caribbean this week, and that is where Chris is at right now, actually, the Renewable Energy Forum. And I do as well want to put in the link to the Caribbean COVID-19 Food Security and Livelihoods Impact Virtual Launch, which was hosted by one of our guest panelists tonight, Miss Daphne Ewing-Chow. And that is the link to that to watch live on Facebook, or to watch the rebroadcast on Facebook Watch. There you go. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and bring our panelists on into the stream. There we go. Welcome, Daphne. Welcome, Theodore.
Hi, good night. How are you?
Good night.
Good night. And thank you so much for being on the show. If you would like to give us the honor, please. Ladies first. Daphne, an introduction for yourself and What brings you here to the show about food security?
Sure. Well, food security is actually my livelihood. I am a journalist, a communicator, a writer. I specialize in food systems, and I am a senior contributor with Forbes, where I write exclusively about food systems and the environment, with a strong focus on the Caribbean. I live in the Cayman Islands, but I am from Barbados. I have worked for the Food and Agriculture Organization in the past, on two separate climate change projects. I headed up communications, and I currently am the communications advisor for the World Food Program in the Caribbean. So this is my life.
Awesome. We got the right woman on the show for tonight. That is for sure. Thank you so much for being here. And Mr. James?
Yes, again, thank you for having me. Um, I am Theodore James. Again, I am the Director for Agriculture and Fisheries here in the British Virgin Islands, and that's under the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth Affairs, Fisheries, and Agriculture. So I have been at the department, or should I say in government, since 2000, where I actually started out in the agricultural industry. And then for about 5 years, I was doing protocol in the Premier's office, as the chief protocol officer at that time. And now I am back into the Department of Agriculture, heading it up. So my background is agribusiness, and I definitely focused a lot of that in terms of production aspect in the animal industry. Uh, but definitely having grown up, again doing farming as a source of income, having as a source of responsibility, I think it positions me quite well. And as the government transitions to sustainability and food security, it actually right now it is the going thing. It is what the world is focusing on, and it is the right time to again build on it and to move forward. So I'm glad to be here.
Well said. Thank you for being here. Daphne, I got to tune in yesterday, and I'm so thankful that I did so, to the Food Security and Livelihoods Impact virtual launch, which I really recommend. It was a very concise and yet comprehensive presentation, which I love. So I really recommend, again, put the links into the comments here. I really recommend people to check that out. Can you give us a kind of a summary of what was presented there, and what are some of the more startling facts right now about food security in our region?
Sure. So just by way of introduction, the CARICOM WFP food systems, well, food security and livelihoods impact survey. It's been going on since the beginning of the pandemic, and it's a partnership between CARICOM and WFP, and with involvement from partners SEDIMA, which is a Caribbean emergency disaster management association agency, and the Food and Agriculture Organization. And basically what has been going on is surveys have been distributed among regional populations, including those in the overseas territories, and asking a number of questions that pertain to experiences with food security. And the results have been assessed and amalgamated by the World Food Program using methodology used by the United Nations to determine scale of food security within populations, and looking at food security on national levels and on an aggregate level within the region, and looking at trends since the beginning of the pandemic. So we're looking at livelihoods and we're looking at food security. Okay. And in terms of what came out, and this was the most telling round. So far, we've managed to assess food security across over 20,000 people within the region. And what we've been able to see through this study is that food security has actually gotten worse since the beginning of the pandemic. And not just worse, but actually worse over time. Inequalities within the region have actually gotten deeper. So basically, you're talking about, a situation where, like, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, kind of thing.
Right.
So the gap has gotten larger. And this is with respect to severe food insecurity. With respect to food insecurity, so let me just step back a second. So severe food insecurity within the region has increased by 72% since the beginning of the pandemic.
Wow.
Yeah, huge. And increased by 44% just between this time last year and now. So significant. And then regular food insecurity, which is still food insecure, but not as severe food insecurity. It has been, in the past year, somewhat stable, but has gone up by over 60% since the beginning of the pandemic. So that's significant as well. Yeah, so that obviously was the most telling part of the results. And also, there's been a change. So at the very beginning of the pandemic, food insecurity was mostly caused by all of the movement restrictions. So people couldn't go to work, people couldn't go to the supermarket here in Cayman. We had an alphabetized system, and I think it was like every other day, and it was traumatic for all of us.
I remember it well.
Yeah, I don't think any of us will forget. And now it's changed, and of course, we have all these new confounding issues that have contributed to this, but now the issue is due to livelihood impacts. People have lost their jobs, and of course, due to other crises, that some of which have been sparked by COVID, others due to global instability, prices have gone up. So 93% of the respondents said that they were struggling because of an increase in food prices. So those were the things that were most telling, and that's basically the results in a short synopsis there.
Wow, very. I mean, this is like Theodore was saying. The time to take action on this is obviously now. I mean, we see the data is in, and it's convincing that things need to be done. Theodore, give us an idea of how different levels of food security. Now, some people think of food security as in, I don't see my favorite product at the grocery store for the last few weeks, or whoa, this thing has gone up by a few dollars. Then there's a deeper level of food security of literal nutrition that populations are depending on. So how give us an idea of how this is impacting people, and how the cost of living is affecting the cost of food and food security or insecurity.
Well, that's a very good question. The reality on the ground is, when you look at the global level and how things are moving, it is really and truly trickling down at the individual level. So from a global perspective, it is trickling down to the regional. That is affecting us. It's then trickling down to the national and the household and the individual. So when we look at whether things are on the shelf or not on the shelf, and then we are looking at the cost of living, as you're saying, it has gone up. But when we look at the pockets of each individual, our salaries aren't going up.
Right.
Products are not on the shelves. Again, nations, as they experience what we are now going through, most nations will begin to hold back some of these products from leaving, because again, everyone has to focus on the home base. Everyone has to focus on what they want to focus on. So it is going to affect us again, not only in the pockets, but when we're looking at what we don't want, our preferences, we begin to substitute. And in substituting, you begin to recognize, okay, I definitely would love a healthier product, but because my money can't stretch further, I then decide, well, I have to go to a less nutritional product, less nutritious product. I might not eat as often. So, like what is being said, poverty begins to increase, hardship begins to increase, and that's what we are having and experiencing throughout the region and throughout the world at this time.
I think that people are feeling it worldwide. We're definitely seeing it in the Caribbean, and the data certainly speaks to it. So we're seeing instability in the supply chain. Are we also seeing how is climate change playing into it? How are some different factors affecting food security, especially here in our region? And what might you be seeing in BVI?
Well, most definitely, whether it is climate change or anything else, the BVI just in 2017 went through Hurricanes Irma and Maria.
Mm-hmm.
In 2017, we also went through heavy floods. Now we're going through the pandemic. And when you look at production, where it was 10 years ago versus to where it is now, and production, let's say in animal production, swine production, you name it, it has taken a hit, a serious hit. Persons aren't able to produce more. And when you look at the rainfall patterns, it has definitely slowed down. It when you're looking at droughts, it is getting more extreme. So how can a farmer contend with not having enough water to irrigate his fields, to irrigate his plants, and still meet mortgage or still meet those demands? So climate change bears a heavy factor. When you look at our fisheries, when you look at conchs, lobsters, since the hurricanes, most of our lobsters or conchs might have gone further out into the ocean versus, where it used to be 10 years ago. It was easier to find 10 years ago. Now you have to go deeper. Now you have to go further. So it is very impactful when you look at it. I loved what Prime Minister Mia Mottley said on the world stage, where we in the Caribbean contributing less towards the climate change issue, the greenhouse plastics, and all these things, and you still want more. So more needs to be done from those countries who contribute most of the issues we have. So we are feeling it all over the Caribbean, and it is hitting us quite hard.
Absolutely. I was watching tuning into a radio program today, some of the Department of Environment experts talking about seabirds, and that the seabirds are having to go further and further because as the seas warm, the fish don't come up to the surface as much. And so it's interesting, all of these ripple effects carrying through all the way to how we're able to grow crops on land. We're really seeing this. And also, we have the wars and the socioeconomic problems and going on. Daphne, would you like to what do you think about how do you see the impacts of climate change happening and some of these socioeconomic factors as well?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Theodore. I think he said it beautifully. Obviously, like he said, we have unpredictable weather. We're dealing with sea level rise, which of course impacts the salinity of the soil. We're dealing with migration patterns of fish changing because, of course, they're trying to go where temperatures are cooler because, of course, our water is warming. We're dealing with ocean acidification, which is hurting our reefs. And, of course, that has an impact on reef-dwelling fish. And, it's killing off shellfish because it causes calcification in their shells, and so countries that depend on, the conch and the lobster, they're being impacted. And as you said so eloquently, Theodore, then we have our agriculture workers and our fisheries workers who are being significantly impacted. And that was actually shown in the study that was done as well, that agriculture workers during COVID-19 were the most disproportionately hit by the crisis. Yeah, yeah. And so you have all of these confounding factors. And of course, then as well, you have a decrease in yields from a terrestrial standpoint. And so what do? We end up having to import more, which of course then has a spillover effects within the community because the food that we're importing is generally less healthy. It's affecting, climate change is affecting the quality of our soils. And as a result, the food that grows in them isn't as nutritious.
Right.
There's so many impacts.
Now we do have a question here coming from Luke Cayman. They are asking about where is the majority of Cayman's food sourced from? The USA, fellow Caribbean nations?
It's coming from the U.S. and actually for the entire region, the primary source market is the United States.
And is that even for food that's originating in other countries? Like there might be even food that's originating, say, in Mexico or even Central America, and it's actually being marketed and distributed through? Or do we get distribution from directly from Central American and South American sources per se?
We do. We get from global sources, but most of our food is absolutely coming from the U.S. and that's a product of economies of scale and a lot of issues within the region around getting food from one country to the next. And you'll find also where countries are involved in agro-processing, that a lot of their inputs are even coming from the U.S. So we're heavily entrenched into the U.S.
Right, fertilizers and chemicals that are being used in different things as well. Yeah. And Theodore, you're seeing the same thing in BVI as far as a dependence on the states, or is BVI having a more rounded approach as to where they're sourcing food from to stock the shelves?
Again, Daphne said it right. A lot of the Caribbean countries, as well as the Virgin Islands, import a lot of the food products from America. America has vast lands. It is cheaper to produce. When you look at, again, some of the things that the government puts in place in America, some of the subsidies, it makes it feasible to produce there for the American people. So what we now have to look at is, again, with food security, how best we will begin to position ourselves to begin to produce even more. If you look at, again, the times we are living in, it is a time of technology, and we must put certain things in place. And I might be jumping the gun, but legislation must be in place. Regulations and policies must be in place that will push persons to be more creative, more creative in creating ways to again reduce the cost of production. We do import a lot of things from abroad, whether it is the UK or the US or other areas. And what I am seeing now, persons are looking further for cheaper product to bring in. Again, cheaper product might not be healthier. Right. The screening might not be done correctly. So we have to be very careful as Smile Island states when we are looking at, again, our food security.
Absolutely. We have Damien Charles saying, should we start to look at Central and South America for meat, seafood, and agriculture products. It definitely makes sense to look closer to our neighbors to do so. Do you see a push happening for that to look more in the region?
I do. I do see a push. The reality is, within the region, we have to decide where we are going to be getting our fuel from. That will help to reduce transportation costs. We have to look at, again, the time it will get from America to any one of our sister islands. The time is going to get from our sister islands to our sister islands. So if we're looking at how we're going to now push regionally, we have to sit around the table and decide what subsidies we'll give, what we can't give, who is better at what. We might have to look at either the size of our ships, how we're going to transport, whatever it is, we have to look at it holistically. And there is time, from my perspective, to begin to have those discussions within the region. And I'm sure that through OECS and CARICOM, these discussions have been happening for a very long time. The reality is, I think what we're looking to do is how to put our first foot forward,
Right.
Evaluate, and then come again.
Yeah, I think another issue with regards to putting our foot forward has also been an issue of standardization of rules and policies. A big one, I think, is the phytosanitary measures that
Correct.
across countries. I know that issues are constantly being raised around that in terms of getting certain foods from different countries regionally. So that's a big one. And then, as Theodore said, to do with like, concessions and taxes and all of that. How are we going to help one another to work together? I mean, within the region, like, we could be self-sufficient if we really looked at who's strong in what. Places like Guyana, Belize, Jamaica. I mean, if we just...
Cuba.
Yes, oh my gosh, Cuba, absolutely. We could do it.
Absolutely, I believe we can as well.
So it is just like what many nations throughout the years have been talking about medical tourism. It is something that we got to look into as in agri-tourism, fisheries tourism, and again looking at each strength, and not only looking at the strength, but also looking at our weaknesses. We cannot forget our weaknesses and how others can assist us with our weaknesses to become stronger. It would be unfair to any nation just to look at strengths. I think we want to capitalize on strength, but when you know what your weakness is, then you begin to build systems to strengthen those weaknesses. And once you do that, you begin to position yourself better for sustainability.
Right. We have to identify the gaps in the game. Absolutely. We are at the top of the hour here, and I just want to give a big shout out to our media partners: Cayman Mall Road, Facebook page, ZJB Radio Montserrat, CBN Radio, FM 90.9 Virgin Islands, Channel 82 Bermuda, and Radio Saba PJFE FM 93.9. Thank you so much for helping to grow the show and spread it throughout the region. It has been an amazing journey, and really huge thanks to the viewers for tuning in every 2 weeks and catching the show, and to our amazing panelists like you both coming on and just making the shows come to life. So huge thanks to our media partners, to all the viewers for support, and to our amazing panelists. And of course, we have here tonight talking about food security on April 27th with Daphne Ewing-Chow from Barbados and Cayman Islands, and Theodore James from the Virgin Islands. So now we have rounded the top of the hour here. Let us talk about how we are going to address this. We have some interesting comments coming in, some questions in our comments section here. Who can speak to, please ask your guests to speak on exclusive economic zones and how they may impinge on food security. That's coming from Mr. Nick Robson here in Cayman. Would either of you like to talk about how exclusive economic zones might impact food security?
I'm going to give that to you, Theodore.
I was going to give it to you, Daphne. I definitely would want to hear from the journalists on this one.
I'm not a trade specialist. I honestly, I actually can't speak to that one.
Okay.
I don't want to venture to speak to that.
Okay.
I got you. Is it Eden? Can we back to that actually?
We can come back to it, definitely. We have one here from Mr. Luigi Moxham. How you doing, Lou? Thanks for tuning in. And he is asking, how can we as a Caribbean community improve our direct access to trade within the Caribbean, in particular within our agricultural resources? Excellent question that we've been speaking to here. And TJ, would you like to take that one to start?
Read the question one more time.
How can we, as the Caribbean community, improve our direct access to trade within the Caribbean, in particular within our agricultural resources? So how can we improve our access? He actually owns a restaurant here in Cayman, and he tries to do a lot. Two restaurants. It's right. Yes. He does a lot of farm to table stuff. So we'll let you both speak to this. How can we improve our direct access to agricultural trade within the region?
How can we improve our direct access to agricultural trade within the region? That's a very good question. Most definitely. Most of the times we always say that it starts out with the governments and the politicians to create that atmosphere for fair trade. The reality is also what we need to do again is to say those things that we need. We definitely need to create that atmosphere within the region on knowing what each person needs. I don't know if Daphne would agree with the concept of particularly like a directory. We need to, how to put it? If I know what persons need in the region, then we are able to then connect with farmers throughout the region to assist and push products to the different places that needs it. Right? So without knowing, take for instance, without information, without data, persons don't know. And that's one of the ways how we can improve trade, improve accessibility, improve, again, the marketing aspects of it. Daphne, what would you say?
I agree with you. Absolutely. Data is a really major part of that. And what we were talking about earlier with respect to learning from one another's strengths and weaknesses. I am in my work, I have been really impressed with the strides taken by the Jamaican government with respect to agriculture and getting their goods, whether it is actual at the primary level with produce, or whether it is value added products out into the marketplace and outside of Jamaica. I find their push has been just so commendable. They are really doing a great job in creating markets and getting their products out there. In addition to that, making access from an electronic means to information where there are gaps better. They've been really good at that as well in terms of linking farmers with markets. So they have a number of online systems that do that. And I think they've been really, really great at that. So we definitely have to become more aggressive about it within the region. I think some countries are more aggressive than others. And I have definitely been really impressed with the work that is being done in Jamaica from that respect.
And one of the things that I will
That's a
add,
great example.
Daphne, one of the things that I will add too is when we look at maybe our trade departments, when we look at these authorities that we set up, again, it is connecting the links together. And, that mandate should be upon those departments that will assist in push knowing what the farmers are going to reap. We need to forecast some more. We need to know what our land space is like, what our seas having. Once we get that full understanding, and not only on that, we need to run a lot of scientific research and development, so that when we actually put the information out there, it is backed, it is factual. So when an authority in the Virgin Islands who is with trade, an authority in Jamaica, authority in Cayman comes together and says, look, let us discuss this. You are great at livestock, you are great at spices, you are great at root crops. This is what we have. And when we look at the region, we then see on a map the percentage of production. We can then again push where interregional trade can be much more fruitful through technology. So, yeah, I just wanted to add to what Daphne said.
So that's one way that we can identify, okay, Cayman can grow this enough for itself and maybe enough to send to trade some. Jamaica can grow this that Cayman can't grow. VI can grow this and so do we need cooperatives? Do we need in the different territories kind of co-op style thinking, or is this something that how can the government help facilitate this, and then how can the other players help facilitate this as far as the actual growers, the ranchers of cattle, who are the players in the food security game? And how can they really help us gain some resilience here? What are the steps forward?
I agree with that, Christian. The steps forward is, again, once we begin to identify who our players are. Now, we know our supermarkets, our retailers, we know our farmers, our fishermen. We know that the government has a part to play. We know that other stakeholders have a part to play. So take, for instance, let's say that we have, let's say in the BVI, that poultry production is at its high, right? Mm-hmm. We then definitely know that where it can come in, certain projects that the government can introduce. Let's say, for instance, a few farmers might not have the cash to do startups, but they have land. Or let's say they have cash, but they don't have land. Governments and other agencies, just like supermarkets might say, look, I need you to be my exclusive provider of rabbit meat, whatever it is. And they can say, okay, I'm going to cater $100,000 towards the infrastructure and build, and you supply me. So it can be a win-win situation where the farmer get infrastructure built and maybe a salary out of it, and a food supply market gets their product. So it is about how best we can, again, assist each other to get what we want. Governments might say, okay, if my regular farmer official goes to the bank, that might be a 5% on top or a 3% on top of a loan, right? You can say, okay, I'm the government, I'm going to give you a 1% for this loan, or it could be a grant, something. So it is, you can give incentives for actually production. If you have places that has acres of land, let's say I have a house, I already built my house, but I have a couple acres sitting down doing nothing with. We can have a program where we can put those acres under, let's say, fruit tree orchards.
Right.
Because again, if we are saying, take for instance, for many of us who experience a Category 5 hurricane and everything basically at the end of it was down, we can come in with a program and say, okay, let's say if I am a stakeholder supermarket, you have 5 acres of land. I will help you with 70% or 50% of the cost to do everything in sugar apple, everything in papaya, everything in, and you can then get to again provide my supermarket with something. However it is, it can work. We just have to sit down and think on how we're going to go about it, where it can be a win-win situation for everybody.
Right, wiser use of our resources. Daphne, how do you think? What are some ways that we can really put our best foot forward in this and see the major players work together for food security in the region?
Can I add to that?
Excellent, definitely.
In terms of the major players, so these are our major players on the ground. I think one thing also that we need to focus on is creating the market for our local produce.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's happening as time goes by, and this has been going on for many years, the entire 21st century, that our tastes have been moving towards fast food and processed foods and foods that are really bad for us. And
Right.
as a result, there are greater benefits for retailers to source so many food items from outside because this is what their customers are demanding. And of course, in the overseas territories, we have a lot of international people living on the ground who are demanding these items. And how can we market our regional produce and also value added to make it more desirable so that
Right.
our local people will seek our products as opposed to going externally? If you look at the power that quote unquote big food has in the world, and particularly within developing regions, areas with small island developing states, you can really then put in your policy. So you have the Nestle's and the Unilevers that have so much power within our region. And they have the financial means to eradicate food insecurity. But do we want to eradicate food insecurity purely on the basis of calories, or do we want healthy people who are eating healthy local foods that are grown, produced here, and people can be healthy? We will have positive impacts from the perspective of the environment.
Right.
Change will be mitigated. There'll be so many spillover effects if we
And new livelihoods.
and livelihoods. Exactly. So it's these global players as well that we need to think about the influence that they have in the region so that these initiatives that Theodore was talking about can really reap great fruit, pun intended.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I was studying permaculture, a big part of it was kind of, if you can't get it from your own out your own back door, you get it from your neighbor. If you can't get it from your neighbor, you get it down the street. If you can't get it down the street, and this whole idea of the radiating need for resources. And speaking to Theodore's example of one island getting hit by a Cat 5 storm, the level of stress of knowing that, oh my gosh, this storm is coming on us, this is going to be devastating, the island gets hit by it, but you know already that your neighbors are, okay, we've stockpiled trees, we have trees ready to send over to you guys so you can replant your papayas, you can replant your breadfruits, you can, we're here and ready to help. Once this storm passes, we're going to be there. And that's my kind of idea of the new Caribbean, is that we really are operating kind of like one country, almost like one, and of course we're each going to have the different political systems, the different societies and different microcultures within that. But I think that there's a great push here that if we can unify, there's great strength and unity among small nations. So I really like the solutions I'm hearing here, and I think they're very pragmatic. How how does this play into, like, how important is a home garden, and how important is our traditional crops, our cassavas and our sweet potatoes, and then how does that play in? How do you see this growing into regional cooperation? Like where, Theodore, you were telling me before we started the show about how there's some new initiatives going on in BVI. Can you tell us about that, and maybe that can kind of light the way as to how we keep growing this idea?
Well, what I'm going to do is just jump straight into that question that you asked. The reality is home gardens. They gives us instant access to fresh produce.
Mm-hmm.
You save time and money on gasoline rather than driving somewhere. You often save money by growing your own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, when you look at the infrastructure, you have to spend some money, but in the long term, you definitely get to save some money. When you're looking at growing your own food, it gives you a complete control of the chemicals you use. You know what is in your food. You know what you're putting in. You
Right.
know the kind of things that you want. When it comes to again, your yard, and we are very mountainous. We are mountainous. When you look at your garden, it often helps with reducing soil erosion and holding the soil in place based on what you are growing. So home gardening is important. It is something that we did a while back. The ministry had a program where we were pushing backyard gardens. And what incentives you'll get, whether you will be getting seeds, you'll be getting a few $1,000s to push you even further. We are even trying to encourage persons to in apartments to have porch gardens.
Right.
There is no need for a small household to be going to the store to get rosemary. You should be able to get rosemary right there. So when you look at our traditional crops, like the root crops, the mango, papaya, banana, soursop, the sea grapes,
Mm-hmm.
we have people who is just using sea grapes and making gallons and gallons of juice.
Right.
You have the breadfruit. One of my favorite was the pomegranate growing up. So when you look at traditional food crops, there is still use for them. What we have to do is scientifically discover, and like what Daphne is saying, through value added. A lot of reasons why we are not moving the way we want to move is because we are still consumed in planting the same thing, harvesting the same thing. But when you slap a label on that bad boy and you make pomegranate jam and you go from there, the many things that you can go ahead and do. And when it comes to bio-regional cooperation, or just let's say regional cooperation, again, we've discussed it earlier. It is important that at some point we would have to look into, if, let's say, if one territory doesn't have the land space and one has, how can one country or one territory travel to another country to utilize some land space that would bring food to that country as well as bring some back to your home? Again, we have to think about the different things that can happen. I'll, I'll let Daphne go forward with her ideas before I even start to think about or talk about some of the programs that we have.
No problem. I actually lost about half of what you said due to connectivity issues. So excuse me if I repeat anything of what you've said, but I did hear the beginning and I completely agree. Backyard farming is an amazing tool to promote food security. Just as it was being promoted in BVI. I know there have been backyard farming programs promoted in Barbados since the beginning of the pandemic, and in Dominica for sure. And I'm sure in many other countries within the region. I think it's fantastic. With respect to traditional crops that you mentioned, absolutely, the cassavas and the sweet potatoes and the yams, these are the absolute best crops for our countries because they are climate resilient crops. So they can withstand the droughts and the storms in a way that a lot of other crops can't. They're highly nutritious. The yields are high. They're perennials, which means that you don't have to upset the soil in the way that you would with other crops when you're harvesting. Absolutely. And then, of course, there's, neglected crops that globally have really taken center stage now, which, are typically considered to be, on the fringes that we need to look at as well. So absolutely.
Excellent. We have I'm Negan watching on YouTube, having a local organic waste repurposing facility, which will remove green and brown waste from the landfill and transform it into compost to grow organic, healthy food. That is a huge part of the puzzle. In Cayman right now, we're experiencing that green waste isn't being accepted at our landfill anymore because there's so much of it. And so we're putting together some ideas about let's have these in district where you don't have to truck this green waste all over the island, create compost that's happening in district. And I think the ideas of where we create the soil in the first place, especially in a place like Cayman with very low soils, and I know a lot of the Caribbean islands deal with the same thing of having very thin soils. This is a huge piece of the puzzle to me as far as actually creating the organic matter to plant in. So ideas like this is most definitely what we need. We are coming into the close of our hour here. And I want to thank everyone once again for tuning in with us. And big thanks again to our media partners, Cayman Mall Road, Facebook and YouTube page, ZJB Radio, Montserrat, CBN Radio, FM 90.9 Virgin Islands, Channel 82 in Bermuda, and Radio Saba, PJFE FM 93.9. Thank you so much for working with us here in Territories Talk, and a huge thanks as well to all of our listeners and everyone who's tuning in on the stream. And we do have a few minutes here, and a huge thanks to both of you for joining us on the show. Some closing comments. Let's close with some ways forward to solutions here. Ladies first.
Okay. So for me, in my personal opinion, our biggest issue is the change in our tastes currently to highly unhealthy processed foods. And we need to market our local and regional foods. That's the first step. A great global example of how that was done was in 2013 when there was this global movement to promote quinoa. Mm-hmm. And now we all eat it as part of our regular diets. Everybody has it in salads, and we should be doing that around our root crops. Our root crops are our gold, and we can promote them to our populations through amazing value added where we can perhaps even offer incentives for restaurants to make more dishes with our root crops and really change the taste. Because at the end of the day, farmers, retailers, restaurants, hotels, they're going to produce they're going to create supply to meet demand or what they perceive as demand. So we need to create the demand as a point of entry. So that's my final thought. And
they're all going to be psyched to use the fresh product as well. I mean, that's the thing is how creative can you get with cassava? And highlighting the nutritional benefits of it. I have sweet potato growing in my yard that you can eat the leaves and the root, and both of them are delicious and nutritious. And so I definitely hear what you're saying. We have to get back into that, readjust our tastes to to those delicious fresh things that come from right around us. Excellent point.
We must do that.
And Theodore, what are your closing thoughts for tonight?
Look, I'm gonna say like this. My wife surprised me one time where she just came up with the idea of getting tamarind from off of the tamarind tree, and instead of doing a tamarind stew, she did a tamarind sauce that she sautéed and pureed the meat in, and she baked that bad boy. And man, let me tell you something. I have a new love for tamarind. Let me tell you, it is not sour no more. It's sweet. But again, going forward is, and to piggyback on what Daphne said, it is time to have a conversation. It is time to have what we are having now, that round table conversation among our people. One of the things we didn't get to really cover is food sovereignty.
Yes.
You know, it is where the people feel and know that what's happening in the agriculture and fisheries industry, they have an input in.
Right.
You know. So the conversation needs to begin not only once a month or just an election cycle, but it needs to be quite often, where we begin to say, these are the problems, people, what are the solutions?
Mm-hmm.
And have a level of pride, have a level of knowing that the things you put in, whether it is the sustainable goals that we are looking to build on, is important again to have that dialogue. Without the dialogue, we don't know who we have among us. We don't know the ingenuity. We don't know the creativity we can get. Many persons might turn and go to Africa and build wells and do things like that. But we need it right here in the Caribbean.
Right.
We need to begin the dialogue. We need to begin to look at our neighbors much more carefully. So I'll stop right there and just say, having a conversation more and putting things in place is what we need going forward.
Excellent. Well said. And speaking of that, I'm sure we're going to be continuing this conversation more so. So it would be great to have the two of you back on another show to address more food security, get into food sovereignty, get into real nutrition and that importance of understanding that it's not just about having empty calories on your plate. It's about having real nutrition and how that is sourced from fresh foods the most. And I want to thank you once again as we close up the hour here for coming on the show and enlightening us, helping to inform and to unite our overseas territory family and the Caribbean family. So huge thank you. I want to encourage everyone to like our Facebook page and check out our YouTube page. All the shows are on there, as well as all these links. I do want to encourage you to utilize the links that were in the comments there. Check out the presentation about the food security and livelihood survey that just happened yesterday that Daphne hosted. And also I put the link up for the dashboard on there, which really gives you information right at hand that you can kind of see the situation picked apart and broken down into different statistics to help inform you. It's really enlightening. And I'm very thankful that World Food Program and CARICOM put this on. And Daphne, thank you again for hosting that yesterday. It was really awesome. And thank you, Theodore, for being on the show. Thanks for all that you do. It is an honor and a pleasure. This is Eden Hurlston. You're very welcome. We'll have you back on again. We need to talk about this more.
Definitely.
Thank you.
All right. Good night. What's that?
I was telling TJ it was nice to meet him. I'm not calling him Theodore anymore. I realized that everybody calls me TJ.
TJ is my name.
All right.
Great meeting you, Daphne. Pleasure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the viewing audience.